I'm sure that's why. You can have that for sure.
All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Josh and Becca Friedman, for dedicating the shiurim this month. Le'ilui Nishmas Josh's father, Yisrael Yehuda, Ben Rav Chaim Rafael Zichron Levracha. To thank Sammy and Malka Esterson for dedicating the shiurim this month in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Leib ben Aaron HaKohen, Sarah Rachel Bas Baruch Avram, Hinda Bas Henech Ephraim, and in honor of Mr. Esterson, his continued Gezunt Ad Me'aver Esim Shanim Tovos. The Pepper family for dedicating the shiurim this month in the commemoration of the yard site of Yosef Pepper, Yosef David Zichron Levracha ben Yaakov. Week of Learning sponsors, Steve Golaskov, in honor of his daughter Rivi's upcoming wedding to Eli Bogart, Mazel Tov and Mazel Tov on the Ofra this past Shabbos, and in honor of his father's upcoming first yard site in Sham Shtav and Aliyah, and the Chassan and the Kala Mirat Hashem should go to the Chuppah B'Shah Tova U'Mitzlachos. Our week of learning is also sponsored by the Pepper family in merit of a refuah shleima for Yaakov ben Rachel. We open the merit of our Talmud Torah. He, together with Kol Yisrael, will have a complete and enduring refuah. With that, let us begin. So we had an incredibly amazing and riveting daf yesterday. I know for those who were able to overcome the Shabbos afternoon fatigue, I got it. It's a hard slot. It's a hard slot. I'm not gonna, the problem is there's really no other slot. I don't know if we're going to do early in the morning. Could do early in the morning, but the truth is, then there's some of the chaver that davens and Ashkama, so it's hard to get everybody. Matzah Shabbos, I don't know. I feel sometimes once you go ahead and you say Baruch Hamavla Ben Kodesh L'Chol, everything happens. Everything happens on Matzah Shabbos. So, all right, we try our best. Maybe we'll have to have like special brew coffee for Ari. What do you think? Something for Shabbos afternoon. Maybe something. Maybe some we'll have some Starbucks triple shots. In back over here. All right, any event. It's Lefum Tzara Agra, Baruch Hashem. Okay, in any event, we'll say new parak today. New parak, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf is Lamed Gimel 33. We are picking up Emirat Hashem on the bottom of Lamed Beis, Amud Beis at the Mishnah. We'll say very interesting topic over here, obviously continuing in the topic of Nedarim. Says the Mishnah, Ein bein hamudar hana mechavero lemudar mehemenu ma'achol. So we'll say, listen to this case. So first of all, let's take a look. We're going to rely heavily today on Rashi. Rashi on the left-hand side. Rashi says, Ein bein hamudar hana mechavero. So just so we understand what's happening over here, shechavero hidiru shelo yehene mimenu b'shum inyan. So we'll say, the case over here is as follows. All right. Reuven goes over to. All right, let's keep it easy. I take a neder, precluding Reuven from getting any benefit from me. That's the case. Remember again, just to understand your terms. Hanoder means a person who makes a neder. Hamudar means a person who is subject to a neder. So in this case over here, I am making the neder, prohibiting Reuven from getting any benefit from anything of mine. Now, what the Mishnah is highlighting to us are two different types of Nedarim. So the Mishnah says there's no distinction between Hamudar Hanoah Mecharo Lemudar Hameno Ma'achal. So we'll say, listen to these two Nedarim. I could say, Reuven, I hereby take a neder prohibiting you from getting any benefits from me. That's Nodar Hanoah. Or I can say, Reuven, you are not permitted to get any food benefit from me. So the Mishnah says, in general, those two Nedarim kind of play out the same way, except Ella, Trisas Haragel, the Kalim Shein Osin Bohen Ochal Nefesh. Now we'll say, what will be the distinction over here? Let's say Reuven, when he goes to shul, he normally cuts through my front yard, my backyard, right, to go to shul. So I will say, so again, if the neder is on Hanoah, then ultimately, again, Reuven can't use the shortcut, because using my property as a shortcut is a form of Hanoah. If it's a neder precluding him from getting food benefit, then what? he can use the shortcut because the shortcut has nothing to do with food. Similarly, if Reuven normally borrows my utensils, so again, if the neder is on hana, Reuven can't borrow my utensils because usage of utensils, is a form of hana. However, again, if I went ahead and the neder was about food, then as long as they are not utensils used in food preparation, there's no problem for Reuven to get benefit from it. Incredible. Fine. So the Gemara says, good. Hamudar ma'achal mechavero. I will say, so again, if I went ahead and I made a specific neder, right? I made a neder precluding Reuven from getting any level of food benefit from me, then lo yashilenu nafa v'kavra v'rechaim v'tanor. I cannot lend him a sieve, a sifter, a mill, or an oven. Aval mash'ilo lo chaluk v'tabas v'talas unizamim. But what can I lend him? I can lend him an article of clothing, a ring, a cloak, or other types of jewelry. Terbo say, now what's happening over here? What's happening over here? If you take a look, actually, we'll jump to the Ran for just a moment. So the Ran says, you see, in the about 12 lines from the bottom, Lo yashenu nafa v'kara v'reichaim v'tanor. They both say, what is the Mishnah coming to add over here? Because remember, again, in the beginning of the Mishnah, we already said that halacha l'maisa, if I make a neder, say, Reuven, you can't get any food benefits from me, so ultimately anything associated with food is going to be usher. These items listed at the end of the Mishnah, the sieve, the sifter, the mill, the oven, are used in the form of food preparation. So what is the Mishnah coming to add over here? So this is actually very interesting. The Ran writes, It's tirich lemisne hani, ki hechi delotesik adaintin, dichi amar dekelim shosim and ochal nefesh asiri, nami b'mundamaychel, hani mili kedera shemevashlan ba, ina mishiput shetsolin babasar, aval hani gorim de gorim ninu, v'lishu moder machal. So let's listen to this. This is very interesting. The Mishnah is going to teach you the following halacha. Right, let's play this out. I make a neder. Reuven, you are not permitted to get any hana'as ma'achal, any food benefit from me. So I'll say, so the Mishnah teaches me that includes obviously not only food, but what? Utensils used in the preparation of food. The Mishnah teaches me, I would have thought, what type of utensils are covered by that neder? What type of utensils? What we'll call utensils used in direct food preparation. A pot, a spit upon which you go ahead and roast meat. What's not included in that neder? What we call gorem de gorem. So we'll say, for example, a mill, a grinding mill. I don't know, a grinding mill is so far removed from actual food preparation itself, or for that matter, again, a sieve, a sifter. I understand these are moved in, but they're so far removed from actual food preparation that occurs in my house, I would have thought that they are not covered by the neder. Kamashmalan they are. Kamashmalan, even food items, or I should say even utensils, used in the process of food preparation that are multiple steps removed from the actual act of cooking, will still be prohibited under this neder. Good. We'll say pretty straightforward Mishnah. Let's understand. Says the Gemara, Mantana, who is the opinion of this Mishnah? Who is the author? Mantana. So we'll say, so now again, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashi says over here, Mantana. Actually, sorry, you just stick with the Ran. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep you jumping around. 5 lines after the bottom of the Ran. Mantana, the Mudra Hana, Astra B'Jisaya. By the way, you've noticed already, one of the complicated parts of Nedarim, you see, in a regular Masechta, there's Rashi and there's Tosas. I mean, just not like on the page. I don't mean like, obviously, one of the complicating things in the Ran is that you have multiple perushim on the Gemara itself. And the difference is that they're pshat perushim. So we'll say, so you have over here, so again, just Rashi, the Ran, you have the Rush, even Tosas in Nedarim is a little bit different. Tosas in Nedarim often, again, goes ahead and helps you just understand pshat. So that's why I apologize, we jump around a little bit. So look at the Ran, Mantana, the Mudra Hana, Asr B'Jisas Regel. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. Here's what catches the Gemara's attention in today's daf, which is, I make a neder. What's my neder? Reuven. I make a neder prohibiting benefit, hana, on Reuven. They both say, so the Mishnah says, by the way, what does that include? What does that include? Even if Reuven were to normally go ahead and take a shortcut through my property, right, he can no longer take that shortcut. So I was intrigued by that, I will say, because that is such a minimal hana. Such a minimal hana that normally Rabbi said we would think that something like that wouldn't even register. Who is the opinion who holds that even drisas harega, literally taking a shortcut through someone's property, is called a halachic form of hana. To say the Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Eliezer. The sign Rabbi Eliezer Omer, afilu vitur aser b'mudar hana. This is fascinating. Rabbi say ultimately again, because Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that even vitur, and Rabbi say, what's vitur? Rabbi say vitur comes from the lashon of yeser, something extra. This is so interesting. Take a look at the Ran again. Just be consistent. Afilu vitur. Mashadakun shalmochin levater lelochin shemosifalam kishalochin peros echad oshnayim afilu osa vita asa b'mudar hana. So it was very interesting. It was often very common when you would, if you would go to a merchant, a vendor, and you would have a relationship with that vendor. It was common if you were buying 3 pounds of apples. That what would the vendor do? He'd give an extra 1, 2 apples. Right? In other words, it was common. That was common in the marketplace, especially with a vendor with whom you regularly did business. So Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that when you are subject to a neder, precluding you from getting hana from someone, even that vitor, even that extra amount is prohibited. Which shows that according to Rabbi Eliezer, when you are prohibited from deriving hana because of a neder, any hana, even that which is normally considered to be insignificant, still becomes true. Because I will say the whole chap with that vitor is, in the eyes of the vendor and in the eyes of the purchaser, that extra 1 or 2 apples. I will say, what is that worth? That extra 1 or 2 apples? What is it worth? Nothing. It's just a gesture. That's all. It's just a gesture. It's not even quantifiable on a financial. Rabbi Eliezer holds when you are forbidden to derive hana because of a neder, any benefit, even that which is normally called inconsequential, will be prohibited. Therefore, again, in this case, when I go ahead and I make a neder to preclude Reuven from getting benefits from me, it includes even his taking a shortcut across my property. Pretty amazing. Very amazing. Good. Says the Gemara. Then the Mishnah said, but if I make a neder, to go ahead, I say, Reuven, you are not permitted to get any food benefits from me. Hana'as machal. Can't get any food benefit from me. So not only could I not lend him utensils used in the direct process of food preparation, but even again, the Mishnah said, even the sieve, the sifter, the mill, and the oven. Both say top of Lamed Gimel. Vaha min maichal nadar. But 1 second. Here's the problem I will say. When you look at the lashon of the neder seems to be, I'm saying Reuven is not permitted to what? Get any food benefit from me. So we'll say, so bepashtos, what should this neder govern? What should it govern? Food. In other words, actual food. In other words, the Gemara is bothered by is, where did you make the jump? Ultimately, again, from food to food utensils? Amar Shimon Lakish, ba'omer hanas ma'achalcha alai. No, whereas I'm not saying ma'achal. I'm saying hanas ma'achalcha. Any benefit from your food should be prohibited on me. So the Gemara said, well, maybe that means, this is actually very interesting. Shelo yilos chitin v'itin amalkaso. Maybe that comes even included. Because we'll say it used to be a common remedy that if you had a wound, what would you do? Chew up some wheat and put it on the wound. I guess it seals the wound. So we'll say, maybe that's what hana'as ma'achalchol comes to include. That in other words, even now we'll say, what's the chiddush of that case? That's a non-food usage of food, right? A non-food usage of food, right? So maybe that's what the neder includes, but it doesn't come to include utensils. To which the Gemara says, Amarava ba'omer hana hamivia lidei ma'achalcha alai. So it's very interesting. What's the neder? The neder is, I hereby prohibit myself from getting any benefit that could lead to food consumption. So that's a pretty expansive neder. Now I understand the Mishnah. So I'm saying that's the neder. So again, I'm taking a neder saying, Reuven, you may not get any benefit that could lead to eating my food. And therefore the Mishnah says when you make a neder like that, it not only prohibits food, what else does it include? Utensils. And what kind of utensils? Anything used in the process of food preparation, even from very earlier stages like a grinding mill, and forward. So Amra Papa, sak lahavi peros, right? So Papa says, by the way, what about a sack that brings produce? The chamar lahavi alav peros, or a donkey, for that matter, that's often used to transport produce. Vafilu tsana ba'alma, and then even a basket by itself. hana hamavia lide ma'achahu. So Rav Papa says, just understand how sweeping this particular neder is. Right? So I will say, so literally, again, if you phrase it this way, then literally anything involved in food becomes prohibited. So the donkey that normally transports the produce becomes prohibited. The sack used to transport the fruit becomes prohibited. The basket, which normally holds the produce, prohibited. That's how expansive, ultimately, again, this neder is. Rabbi say, take a quick look at the Ran for just a moment. Right before the lines get wide, it's 6 lines. Damar hanaas ma'achalcha alai. So it sings the Ran, Dechivan, shosiv va'amar, hanaas hamachal hari asu alatzmo, kama shegoremoso. So I'll say, I'm sorry, actually, that's too, sorry, I'm drawing back. Forget that, let's go weiter. So, by Rav Papa, sus, so I'll say, so now, here's what we've got. So I'll say, so now the Gemara is assuming over here that Rava's position, that the lotion of the neder is, Bomer hana'a hamavia lide machalcha. That's the neder. So I'm telling Ruvain, you may not get any benefit from anything that can lead you to food consumption. So now it prohibits food. It prohibits, obviously, utensils used in direct food preparation. And then we branch out to pretty much include any utensil involved in any stage of the food preparation, including what? Even transportation of food. So we'll say, Sinar Papa asked us, it's very interesting. Bar Papa, sus lirkov alav v'taba'as lira'os b'mahu. So Rabbi said, listen to this. What about a horse to ride on, or a ring to be seen in? Then Rabbi said, now what does this mean? Umezel ba'are. So first, I'll take a look at Rashi's interesting machlokes Rashi in the Ran over here. Rashi says, sus lirkov alav lelech lebeis hamishta. What about a horse to borrow, right, so that I could get to a meal? So obviously, again, if the meal, right, so if Ruben wants to borrow my horse to get to a meal, is that called food benefit as well? Since he's using the food, right, he's using the horse ultimately to get to the Beis HaMishta. Or, taba'as li'ra'os, Rashi says, be'Beis HaMishta kedei shiena bokava. So actually, skip down to the Ran for just a moment. The Ran says, this is in the wide lines of the Ran, 4 lines in. Sus lirkav alav etabas le'ra'os bo. Mifsak amez ba'ari. Listen to this. Diamrinan nihidak kravas hamaychol elav mikri hano hamavile de maychol. Shabbos says, now remember, what have we established? We've established that any hana that enables or facilitates food consumption is going to be prohibited under this neder. So watch this. Afilu hachi lahakriv li'atzmo ma'achol kemifsak umezal ba'ari. Listen to this. Sus lirkov alav leiraos ba kedei sheyira ke'adam chashuv or k'sheyirkov asus teitabas al yado b'shil ze yitnu money yefa ki haygavna grama ba'almahu. So we'll say, now listen to this. Here's the question. Can Ruvain borrow my horse or go ahead and borrow my ring? Why? According to the Ran, because he's going to a su'udah. Now, it's not my su'udah. It's not because he can't eat my su'udah. He's going to a different su'udah. But why does he want to borrow my horse? Because Rabbi say, everyone knows, if you roll up to a su'udah in a horse, you get service. Right? You get service. You're coming on the, clunker donkey, right? No one gives you a second look. But you roll in on that horse, right? You pull into the horse valet and they take your horse, right? I will say, and then, right, you get first class service. Or you come in flashing a signet ring, mamish, like, right? You're the maitre d' coming, you're taking you to the back, right? To the back of the restaurant. So I will say, so here's the shaila. Or for that matter, again, I will say, again, the last part is taking a shortcut to my property to get to the su'udah, not my su'udah. So it's like, so you hear what the Gemara is asking? Is now you're telling me that according to Rava, the neder that I'm making, that's prohibiting Ruvain is anything that leads, any hano that leads to food consumption is prohibited to you. So now we've established he can't eat my food, he can't use my utensils, anything that leads up to food consumption. What about if he wants to use my stuff, borrow my stuff to enable food consumption, but it's nothing to do with my food? See, he's going to a different su'udah. But if he goes ahead and comes on my horse, he'll get better service. He'll go ahead and wear my ring, he'll get better service. He cuts across my yard, he'll get to the su'udah faster and get better service, to get a better portion. Is that also prohibited by the neder of Hana. So fascinating. So the Gemara says, what's the case? My. So Tashma, aval mashelo chaluk v'talis unuzam v'tabaos. So what do we learn in the Mishnah? Even when I make a neder prohibiting Reuven from getting any food benefit from me, I can go ahead and what? Lend him my cloak, right? My shirt, my cloak, and rings, and right, nose rings and rings, bracelets and rings. So what the Mishnah says, even when you go ahead and you make an neder prohibiting food benefit, you could lend jewelry or other items, clothing. I could lend clothing to Reuven. So we'll say, so sounds like it's about to say, what's the case? So we'll say, what's the case? If I'm lending these items to Reuven, and Reuven's not going out in public with them, so he's not going to be seen in them, then what's the chiddush? Of course I'm permitted to lend them to him. Ella, lav afilu le'ra'os bahen. Rather, I will say, well, it must be the case. The Mishnah says, I can lend him clothing, I can lend him jewelry, even though what? He's going to go out and be seen with it and potentially get better service because of it. Yet you see it's still permitted. Vekatani mashilo. To which the Gemara says, no, lo the olam shaloli raos. No, in general, the truth is the Mishnah is saying you can lend him clothing, you can lend him jewelry, but if that the assumption is that he is not going out to be seen with these items. Vekatani mashi. To which the Gemara says, v'aidi diktani reisha lo yashilenu. Since the reisha said lo yashilenu, you shouldn't lend. So katani seifa. Tana Seifa Mashilo. The Seifa says you can lend. So I will say, interestingly enough, so the Gemara doesn't seem to answer it. So in other words, here's what we have. So therefore, I make a neder. Let's use Rava's understanding over here. I make a neder, ultimately precluding Reuven from getting any food benefit from me, or I should say differently, any benefit which leads to food. Okay. So now I'll say, what's covered under that neder? Let's start with the obvious. What's covered under the neder? Food. Good. Next stage. Utensils used in direct food preparation. Next stage under that utensils used indirectly in food preparation. Again, the sieve, the sifter, the mill, the oven. Then we'll say what Rav Papa introduces next. What's Rav Papa's question? What about totally non-food utensils? My horse, my ring, a shortcut that enables him to get food, not my food, that enables him to get food. Is that also prohibited under the neder and answer? We'll say, so if you notice, by the way, the Gemara doesn't answer it. So we'll say, if you look at the Ran, so the Ran says over here, the Ran says it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 lines up from the bottom. So the Ran says, Ule'inyan halacha, bayid Rav Papa lo ifshita. The Gemara doesn't answer Rav Papa's question. Therefore, hilchach naktinon ba l'chumra. So it says the Ran, in the absence of a definitive psak by the Gemara, we'll have to go to Chumrah. So therefore, it's incredible. So therefore, in this case, it's incredible. In this case, if I go ahead and I make an end, I say, Reuven, you are not permitted to get any hana'ah which could lead to food consumption. Hana'ah hamavile de ma'achalcha. Ultimately, again, the way Paskin is going to prohibit everything. It's going to prohibit, again, food, utensils used directly in food preparation, utensils used indirectly in food preparation, and any item which could lead to food benefit for Reuven. So Reuven says, I want to borrow your horse because I want to roll up to the restaurant in a very fancy horse. Sorry, can't let you do it. I want to borrow your ring because I want to get faster service. Can't let you do it. I want to go ahead and cut across your yard because I have a reservation in the restaurant. I want to make it. Can't let you do it. Ultimately, again, that's how expansive the neder itself becomes. Incredible. Mishnah. Now, this Mishnah is a continuation of the previous one. But any item not used in food preparation, right, not related to ochel nefesh, so therefore again, makom shemaskirin kiyotze bahen aser. So I will say this is very interesting. Very interesting. So what we established in the previous Mishnah was like this. If I make a neder that Reuven cannot get any benefit which leads to food consumption. That's how we frame now the Mishnah's neder. Sefer Rabbi say, utensils which have nothing to do with food preparation. For example, Reuven wants to borrow my lawnmower. He will say, can I lend Reuven my lawnmower? Can I lend my lawnmower? Yeah. Why? Because again, there's no shaykhs to food. and it's not going to enable food consumption. So therefore, again, that should be totally permitted. I will say, says the Mishnah, one little detail. If the lawnmower is something that I normally rent out, and Reuven would have to rent, And now what? By borrowing it, he's what? Saving the rental fee. That's called food benefit as well. Why? Because now he has extra money available for food. I will say, by the way, you learn these sugyas, and now you understand, don't make Nedarim. Right? That's like the simple takeaway from all of this. Don't make Nedarim for the simple reason. Now, what often happens in life is we say things and we do things and we don't even understand the unintended consequences, ultimately, again, of our actions. It's such an incredible idea. So now the Mishnah says, by the way, even items which are normally rented out, you can't go ahead and borrow if you're under the neder for food consumption. Why? Because halacha lemaisa, the money you save can be used for food, and therefore it's called food benefit. So I will say, so the Gemara says as follows. So it says that's the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Michlal dereisha afapi she'ein maskirin. So I will say, ultimately, again, it sounds like the Reisha is talking about even if it's not normally rented out. Mantano, who is the opinion that suggests this? Amravada bar Ava, Rabbi Eliezer. So I will say, so the first part of the Mishnah, which seems to indicate that ultimately, again, even if they're not rented out, it would be aser, right? Is Rabbi Eliezer. Because Rabbi Eliezer of the opinion that says afilu vitor. Remember, Rabbi Eliezer says any amount of hana ultimately, again, is going to be problematic. Okay, incredible. So we'll say, if you take a look, fine. Let's go back there. Hamudra hana mechavero. A lot of interesting runs that we're not doing today. Really fascinating details, but let's go back there. So hamudra hana mechavero. So we'll say, so same case. I'm taking a neder prohibiting Ruvain from getting any benefit from me. So hamudra hana mechavero. Shokel lo shiklo. So we'll say, so now that we've spoken about all of the things that you can't do if you make a neder prohibiting someone from getting food benefit from you, we're going to talk about the things you can do. Very interesting listing over here. Samudra na mechavera. So we'll say, so same case. I make a neder prohibiting Ruvain from getting any level of benefit from me. Okay? The Mishnah says, shokel shiklo. What can I do? I can pay Ruvain's machzis hashekel. Very interesting. So remember, every Jew has an obligation to pay a half a shekel, right? That goes into the fund for carbon sibur. So I could pay Ruvain's shekel for him. Upareis chavo, this is wild. I can go ahead and repay his debt. So let's say Ruvain owes Shimon $1,000. I can pay Ruvain's debt to Shimon. Umachsir lo es avidaso. Not only that, I can go ahead and return his lost object. So let's say Reuben loses an object, I could return his lost object to him. Makom shenotan schar, I will say in a place where it is common to go ahead and pay someone for returning a lost object. This is very interesting. See, I will say you can't charge someone for returning a lost object. Because we'll say, watch this. Let's play this out. Let's say again, Reuben loses an object. I find it, and I know that it's his. But the truth is, so I've fulfilled the Havashavas Aveda. Ultimately, again, but as a result of it, I miss a major meeting and lose out on a $5,000 sale. So I can't go. So I come to Ruvain and say, Ruvain, I'm just happy to return your object. You owe me $5,000, right? Because I didn't this. So he can't do that. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, again, I have a biblical obligation of hashavas aveda. I'm mushva va'omed. I'm already obligated in it. Now, there were places where the custom was, if someone did you a favor, right? I shouldn't say someone did it. If someone performed the mitzvah of Hashavas, it's not a favor. If someone did the mitzvah of Hashavas Haveda, it was customary to give them something. Just a token, ultimately recognizing the fact, I will say, in life, one of the most important things is if someone does something for you, someone expends effort on your behalf to say thank you. I will say, maybe they're obligated to do it. Right? Maybe they're obligated to do it, right? Maybe they're mushal. In other words, they have an obligation. Maybe the person works for you, or maybe the person is the checkout, the clerk at the store. Or maybe the person, this is their job. Just because something is someone's job doesn't mean they don't deserve a thank you and a recognition for it. So even though it's my job to do Hashavah, I will say it's the most important thing. And you sometimes, when you take the moment to do it, you recognize, unfortunately, how infrequently it occurs. So whether it's, again, it's the checkout person at the supermarket, or whether it's, Jorge over here who works, mamish like a behema gasa every single day, like to make sure the building is, or the security guards, or anyone else. You come to the office, the people here work, just a hakaras hatov. Someone does. So again, it was customary to go ahead and give something to people who did Hashavas Haveda. So let's say, but here's the problem. I made a neder, right? I made a neder. So now I'm allowed to return the lost object. But if Reuven goes ahead and gives me $10, what do I do with that? Ultimately, tipo hana lehekdish. You give that to Hegdish. In other words, you give it to tzedakah. Fine. So let's analyze this. So I will say, so here's what's happening about. So let's just play this out. I made a neder. Reuven, you are not permitted to get any level of benefit from me. So even though I made that neder, what did the Mishnah say? I am allowed to pay Reuven's half shekel. I'm allowed to pay off his debt, and I'm allowed to go ahead and return his lost object. So we'll say, what's the pshat? Isn't that benefit? So this is incredible. So look at the Gemara. Alma avruchi ari ba'almuhu. We'll say, what do you see from here? The definition of benefit is giving something to someone that they did not have before. That is different, I will say, than let's say paying off someone's debt, because that's what half shekel is, and that's ultimately again what paying off a debt is. I will say, when I pay off someone's half shekel, am I giving them something they didn't have before? No. What am I doing? The little lashon over here is I'm chasing a lion away from their property. In other words, there's a force here that's coming to extract something from them. What I'm doing is I'm blocking the force from coming. That's not called hana. The definition of hana is giving something to someone they did not have before. But preventing someone from having an outlay of cash, that is not called hana. Fascinating. So therefore, again, when I pay Reuven's half shekel, am I giving Reuven something he did not have before? No. When I pay off his debt, it's very interesting. Am I giving him something he didn't have before? No. Why not? Because he already has the money, right? So when you borrow money in halacha, when you take that money from the lender, that money becomes yours. When I pay off Reuven's debt, I'm not giving him anything new. I'm simply I'm chasing away the lion from his property. Same way again, if I chase away a lion from someone's property, can I come back and say, hey, listen, I chased away the lion, that'll be $100? No. It's called Mavriach Ari Menichse Chavero. I can't, because I didn't give you anything, I prevented damage. I will say, take a look at the Ran for just a moment. It's a really fascinating idea. Take a look at the Ran. 4 lines up from the bottom. Alma avruchi ari ba'almish tehu deshari. So ashokelo shiklo porelo chovo kai telachishar mishum telav midi yoevle. I will say, when I pay off Reuven's half shekel and I pay off his debt, I'm not giving Reuven anything. I'm not giving anything to him. Elo shemasalik hamal v'me'alav. I'm removing a creditor from you, right? Whether it's an actual creditor, whether it's the Beis HaMikdash, or Mishum Hachi, Nami Shokel Shiklo, Tehalo Mahani, Tebalav Hachi Yishol Chele Bekabanos Tzibor. Suppose it's very interesting. So the Ran actually, see, when you learn the Gemara, you can easily think it's the same reason for both ideas. I can pay off Reuven's half shekel, and I can pay off his debt. Why? Same thing. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm paying off creditors. Paying off creditors is not called hana, is not called benefit. It's called chasing away the lion from destroying the property. The Ran says the truth is that's true by the creditor. By the half shekel, there's a different issue. By the half shekel is I'm not really giving benefit to Reuven. Why? Because even without the half shekel, Reuven has a portion in communal offerings. So ultimately, again, whether you pay your half shekel, you don't pay a half shekel, you have a portion in communal offerings. So I'm not really giving him anything additional. That's a Ran quotes Terminal Avod, Vala Gavoy, Vala Asil Gabos. So we'll say, so really very interesting. So therefore, that's why the Mishnah says, even though I make a neder, Reuven, you cannot get any benefit from me. Halacha l'maisa. I can still go ahead and pay off his shekel, pay off his half debt. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Mantana, whose opinion is this? So Amar Rav Oshia, Zu, Amad Beis, Zu, Divrei Chananhi. Whose opinion? This is Chanan. We'll say, we're going to see Chanan in just a moment. By the way, you remember Chanan from Ksuvas. You're going to remember Chanan in just a moment. He's going to come up. So the Gemara, Rava says, no. Afilu tema divrei hakol. Truth is, this could reflect everyone. Why? So the Gemara says, Gabi muder hana di yoev. I'm sorry. Amar Rava. Sorry. Rava Amar afilu tema divrei hakol. This could really reflect everyone's opinion. Gabi muder hana di yoev almanas shelo lifroa. ultimately, again, I will say that Allah Almighty, if you look over here, look at the Ran for just a moment. Afilu tema divrei hakol. Tafilu rabbanan da'amri shechayiv lo lahach shelo devei. We're going to get to Hanan in just a moment. Kai mudar no. The next Ran. Kilomar. I'm like three. I'm in the Ran 3 lines down from the top middle of the line. Kilomar. Techishalvu histnu imo shelo yehei koach bechavera lekofo elech sheyirtza lova yifra enemy daito. We'll say it's very interesting. We could be talking about a case of a loan where halacha l'maisa, when the lender lent the borrower money, the lender said to the borrower, "There's no due date on the loan. There's no due date, right? You could pay back whenever you want." So we'll say, here's what's interesting: when you have a loan like that, everyone agrees that if someone else pays back that debt for me, it's not what? It's not hana. Right? Why is it not hana? Why is it not hana? Because there's no due date. If there's no due date, that means that that debt is pretty much forever uncollectible. Therefore, when someone goes in and pays it back for me, that's not called hana, and everyone would agree that such a thing is not hana. So we'll say, so let's go weiter for a second. So my hana. So we'll say, so let's go back. So remember again. Here's what the Mishnah teaches me. I make a neder that Reuven cannot get any benefit from me. The Mishnah says, okay, that's fine, but I can still pay Reuven's half shekel. I can still repay his debt, and I can still return his lost object. Why is that? Isn't that hana? To which the Gemara says, no, it's not hana. It's not hana. So what do I call it if it's not hana? Mavriach ari minichse chavero. I'm chasing a lion away, ultimately, again, from my friend's property. The definition of hana is giving something to someone they did not have before. But since ultimately, again, all I'm doing over here is preventing the creditor from coming to Reuven, that's not called hana. So the Gemara says, whose opinion is this? This is Hanan. So we'll say, my Hanan, here we go, my Hanan. So this is not, here we go, but you're going to recognize from Ksuvis. Mi shalach lemedinas hayam. A man, right, Reuven is married to Rachel, and Reuven goes overseas, and I will say, Reuven just forgot to leave any mizonos for his wife. He was in a rush, right? And what happens? Amad echaro pirnei says ishto, and I will say, what happened? So someone came along, Shimon came along, unrelated to Reuven, Shimon came along and gave mizonos to Rachel. He provided for Rachel. So Hanan Amar Ibeit Esma Osav. Hanan says, and I will say, now remember, let's play out the story. What happens? Shimon the husband comes back. Reuven the husband comes back, and Shimon says, Yomi $500. I supported your wife while you were away. So Hanan Amar Ibeit Esma Osav. Hanan says, no, sorry. Hanan says, Reuven could say to Shimon, no, I owe you absolutely nothing. I owe Ibeit Esma Osav. So we'll say, so now what's the pshat? What's the pshat? So we'll say, go back to Rashi for just a moment. Top Rashi. Divrei Hanani. Rashi says, Da'amar Ibeit Esma Osav, she'in l'malva al baila shazu klum, ho'il v'lo nasan biado, elev riach ari me'alav. So I will say, what has Shimon done? What has Shimon effectively done? Shimon prevented a creditor from descending upon Reuven. Who is the creditor in this case? The wife. The wife. So, all right, what does Shimon do? So in other words, so Shimon comes back and says to Reuven, or Reuven comes back and Shimon says to him, listen, I gave you benefit of $500. I paid your wife $500 for support. Reuven said, you didn't give me any benefit. You didn't give, right? Is there anything additional in my pocket? Hana means something additional I did not have before. You didn't give me anything extra. What you did is you chased the lion away from my property. You prevented a creditor from extracting money from me. That's not called Hana. And Hanan says, therefore, again, Shimon has absolutely no claim against Reuven. The most come full circle. That's why the Gemara says, who is the Tana? Who is the opinion of our Mishnah? Hanan. So therefore, Allah Chamaisi, when I take a neder not to go ahead and get benefit from Reuven, or I should say differently, when I take a neder prohibiting Reuven from getting benefit from me, I can still pay off his debt, still pay off his half shekel. Says the Gemara, Nechlaku alav b'nei Kohanim Gedolim. The sons of the Kohanim Gedolim disagreed with Hanan in the Mazonos case. Va'amru Yeshava Kama Hotzi V'yitol. Shabbos. So the sons of the Kohanim Gedolim, the other the Rabbanon say no, not true, right? Shimon did give benefit to Reuven. Reuven owed his wife Mazonos. Reuven didn't give his wife Mazonos. Now Shimon comes along and gives her $500. So ultimately, Shimon has recourse against Reuven. And therefore, Allah Chalamaisa, he has to go ahead and pay him. Now, we'll say, so remember again, let's just go full circle here. So remember again, the Gemara wants to suggest that our Mishnah could even reflect the view of the Rabbanon. How so? Because maybe we're talking about a case of a debt for which there was no due date. That's what the Gemara said before. For which there was no due date. So we'll say, so a debt for which there is no due date, even the Rabbanon would agree that what? That if I come and pay Reuven's debt that had no due date, even the Rabbanon agree that what? That's not Hana. That's not Hana. Fine. So Rabbi Dos ben Hyrcanus, I'm sorry. Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Hyrcanus Kidivrei. Rabbi Yossi ben Hyrcanus said that the halacha follows the Rabbanon, and therefore again, Shimon does have a claim against Reuven for the $500 of mazonos. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Yofa Amar Chanan. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says no. Chanan said good. We pass him like Chanan. Hiniach ma'osav al keren hatzvi. Ultimately, I will say what's happened over here. Effectively, Shimon has placed his money on the horns of a deer. And I will say, what happens when you place your money on the horns of a deer? It's done. It's gone. It's lost. Good. The Rava lo Amar Kirav Hoshia. So Rava doesn't pass like Rav Hoshia. Why? They come because he wants to establish the Mishnah in accordance with everyone. Rav Hoshia lo Amar Kirava Gezerah shelo lifara mishum lipara. Because we will say Rava is concerned that halacha lamaisa, you set it up as a case. Ultimately, again, as a debt that doesn't have a due date, but if we allow repayment of that debt, one may come to confuse that with a case of a loan that does have a due date, in which case, according to the Rabbanon, repayment of that debt would in fact go ahead and be Hana. Seif Rabbosai, where we are holding right now, let's go just with the basic opinion. Right? So we have a machlokes over here of Rav Hoshia and Rava. Whose opinion does the Mishnah reflect? Rav Hoshia says that the Mishnah reflects the view of Hanan. Rava holds that the Mishnah could even reflect the view of the Rabbanon. Let's say, for the purpose of moving forward, let's assume right now that, like Rav Hoshia, that the Mishnah reflects the view of Hanan, and therefore halacha l'maaseh with the Mishnah is coming to teach, and this is dramatically amazing. That namely what's the definition of Hana? Definition of Hana, right? Getting something additional that you did not have before. There's more in your pocket. There's more in your hand than what you had before. If something provides quote unquote benefit, but doesn't increase, right, your assets, right, or doesn't give you something additional tangible, that's not called Hana. That's called chasing away a line. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, even though I take a neder prohibiting Reuven from getting any benefit from me, Mishnah, like Hanan is our Mishnah, and therefore again I could pay off his debt, I could pay off his half shekel, I could even return his lost object. Good. Let's go weiter for just a few more moments. Mishnah said, Machzula Savidaso, I could also return his lost object. So Pligi bar Rabbi Amar Rabbi Asi, I will say very interesting. Machlokes Rabbi Amar Rabbi Asi. Chad Amar, one said, Lo Shanu Ella. So the shaila is, what's the case of returning the lost object? So one opinion said, Lo Shanu Ella, Shebenichse Machzir Asurin Al Balaveda. So we'll say the case must be where the person returning the object, his property is asur upon the person who lost the object. Therefore, we'll say what's happening over here, right? So the lost object. So the person who's returning the object, it's he whose property is asur upon the person who lost the object. Therefore, in that case, you could return the object. Why? Because when the object is returned, Neidam denafshi kamahadole. You're just simply returning the owner's property to him, and there's no additional benefit that occurs. Aval, michse balaveda surah machzir, Rabosai, if the property, ultimately again, of the balaveda, so the property of the person who lost the object, is prohibited upon the person who's returning the object, lo kamahadole, he can't return the object in that case. Why? To kamahani le pruta d'Rav Yosef. My gosh, this is absolutely incredible. They will say, why? Because there is benefit of what we call the pruta de Rav Yosef. And I will say, what's the pruta of Rav Yosef? So we'll say it's outside. This is incredible. We will say there's a concept called osik b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah, which means what? At the moment that you are performing one mitzvah, you are exempt from another mitzvah. So I will say, let's play this out for just a moment. Technically speaking, just a regular case, I go ahead and I find a lost object. I pick it up. I know it belongs to. I'm walking to Reuven's house. As I'm walking to Ruvain's house, a poor man stops me and asks me for tzedakah. I will say, technically, what's the halacha? What's the halacha? I don't have to give him tzedakah. Why not? Because since I'm engaged in the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, I'm exempt from a mitzvah. So I will say, what's effectively happened now as a result of Hashavas Aveda? What's happened? I saved myself $1. I saved myself $1. So I will say, so the Gemara says something very interesting, that in a case where ultimately, again, the property of the person who lost the object is prohibited to ultimately the person who found the object, I can't go ahead and return the object in that case. Why? Because as the person who found it is returning it, technically speaking, he could save money by being osek b'mitzvah, which turns out that what? He's now benefiting from the property of the person who he's prohibited to benefit from because of a neder. That's called, Rabbi say, Pruta d'Rav Yosef. Pruta d'Rav Yosef. The other opinion is, V'chad afilu nichse balaveda asruna machzir mahadirle. The other opinion says, no. Even in a case of, where the property of the person who lost the object is prohibited to the person who found the object, the person who found the object could still return it, right? And it's not called hana. Why? Umishum prute d'Rav Yosef lo shchiach. What does it mean, prute d'Rav Yosef lo shchiach? Come on. How likely is that? How likely is that at the time that you're going ahead and returning the lost object, someone's going to stop you for tzedakah, and in that very moment, you're going to save yourself $1 because osik b'mitzvah. That's so uncommon that we don't legislate based on it. So now we see halacha l'maisa in the case of machzir avedas, in the case of returning a lost object. There's a machlokes. Does it matter over here who's losing and who's returning or not? We'll stop over here for today. I'm leaving you mid machlokes. But Amirat Hashem, again, we'll see the resolution and the halacha l'maisa Amirat Hashem in tomorrow's daf. Rabbi said, let's spend a few moments doing Mesilas Yesharim. All right, I will say good morning. So we are picking up Amirat Hashem today, Sunday, the 3rd of Kislev, the 27th of November. I will say, by the way, there are still additional copies of the Mesilas Yesharim here in the box. Also, even if you have a copy, pick up a copy of the calendar, which are also in the box, so you can see exactly where we're up to each and every day, both in the art scroll as well as in the Hebrew edition. So we'll say, let's go right there. So says the Ramchal. So Amnam kimo b'dabrina b'mitzvos shayatzorach b'am yoser dahinu masher regilus b'nei adam likashal kach nedaber b'midos b'rashios b'arichus in yoser b'nei regilus b'am. So we'll say this. We spoke about this in last year. The same way that when it comes to mitzvos, when it comes to actions or averos, there are certain things that we transgress, and certain things we transgress without even realizing that we have transgressed them. And certain things ultimately, again, that are transgressed, there are so many tentacles of transgressions. And we saw that by averos, remember again, Ramchal went through this explaining that halacha l'maisa, there are certain averos which are even more common than others. Remember again, his categories of averos, we've got theft, arayas, ma'achalas asuros, lashon hara, chil Hashem. So when it comes to midos, there are certain midos, there are certain character traits which we go ahead and transgress more easily as well. And what are they? He says, Vehem hagaiva, hakas, hakina, v'hataiva. There's arrogance, anger, jealousy, and lust or desire. Hein kol midos raos ashera asam nikaris mifusemes. They both say, everyone knows how terrible these particular character traits are. Ein sarach larayas. We don't have to bring proofs to why they're terrible or why they're destructive. But hine rose hein ba'asman v'ros b'toldo sayin. The character traits themselves are terrible, and ultimately, again, what they engender is equally as destructive. Ki kulan chutz mishuras haseichel v'achachma. And above, here's what's amazing. All of these character traits operate outside of the intellect. In other words, intellectually, I know all of these things are destructive. V'chol achas kedei liatzma lahavi esa adam el averos chamuros. And above, say each of these midos by themselves, unfortunately, have the ability and capacity to bring a person to serious transgression. So we'll say, now let's go through each of these. Ala gaiva. So we'll say, let's start with gaiva. Let us start with gaiva. Okay. Fine. Okay, I was going to go. Fine, we'll go weiter. Allah gaiva. Mikra mali masir va'omer. Shabbos is incredible. So we have a passage that says, "V'ram levavecha v'shachachtu as Hashem elokecha." Shabbos say, what does gaiva tell you? Right? A person will become arrogant and haughty. And what happens if a person becomes arrogant? Shabbos say, you forget Hashem. Shabbos say it's very logical because when a person is arrogant, what does arrogance create? Egocentricity, self-centeredness. Everything is about me. If everything is about me, there's no room for anyone else, including HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Alakas, what about anger? Person gets angry, it's as if they're worshipping idolatry. We'll say, what's the pshat with that? Because we know when you get angry, what could happen? A person could lose control in such a dramatic fashion that literally, again, they become capable of even worshipping idolatry. Alakina, jealousy, vataiva, and desire. Shaninu behedja. Hakina vataiva vakavad motzina sa'adam min ha'olam. It will say jealousy, lust, and desire, quest for constant honor, literally remove a person from this world. Amnam ha'iyuna mitzarech bam hu limolit mehem mikol anfeim. So we'll say, I understand why all these things are destructive. What I need to understand is the need of how to distance myself from these things. What I also need to figure out are like, what are the tentacles, right? What are the things, what are the character traits or behaviors that could lead me to these more destructive form of midos? Kikulam ke'echad surei hagefed nachriya. Because when I say all of them, it's such poetic lashon. All of them are like branches of the same alien vine. Right? There's this alien negative vine, and the vine has multiple offshoots. We're going to go through each of these midos, each of these destructive character traits one by one, in an effort to understand them, and an effort to appreciate all of their tentacles, and then ultimately come to avoid them. So here we go. So we'll say, let's start with gaiva, arrogance. We'll say this is so profound. Sha'adam machshiv atzmo be'atzmo. So I will say, this is actually a very profound statement. Literally, hadam machshiv atzmo be'atzmo. A person is machshiv himself in himself. I will say, I'm going to read to you we don't have this edition. So in the edition that I used in the previous cycles of Masal Sharm, there's a footnote here. I want to read to you the footnote. Machshiv atzmo be'atzmo miyachis chashivos li'atzmo mitzad atzmo. I feel that I'm important. Why? Why? Because of me. Now, we'll say, what does that mean? Not because of an accomplishment, not because of any struggle I've overcome, not because of anything I've done. I just feel that I am inherently important. I will say, now we're going to see, by the way, you say to yourself, well, isn't that a good thing to think that you're important? Yes. We're going to see gaiva, I will say, like every other negative midah, every negative trait, I will say, has a positive quality. We saw this in Sidkas HaTzadik, right? Remember again, Rabbi Tzaddik said, there's no such thing as a bad koach. There's no such thing as even a bad midah. It's just sometimes koach is misused in the wrong way. So the same koach could propel me in two different directions. The koach itself is good. It's just how you use it. So I will say, gaiva means I feel that I'm important. Why are you important? Because I am. Machshiv atzmo biatzmo. O bilvavo yidame kilo navasil. In my heart I say, I deserve praise. Va'amnam say yachali mashach misvaras rabbas mischalfos. So I will say, a person could come to be a bal gaiva from a variety of different reasons. I will say, some people become bal gaiva arrogant because they think they're very intellectual. I will say, some people think they're very smart. I will say, by the way, you know this, right? There's some people who literally hold that they're they're so intellectually astute. You know, so you see this sometimes. You could tell a lot about a person when they don't understand something in Torah, right? So how do you phrase it when you don't understand something in Torah? Person says, this makes no sense. Really? When you say this makes no sense, what you're saying is, I know all, right? So this is wrong. Person could say, this makes no sense to me. This person could say, I don't understand. When a person says, this makes no sense, that's gaiva. You understand everything in the world. You understand the Kadosh Baruch Hu, you understand Torah. Again, so often we don't even realize it, that we emote this sense of gaiva just in how we talk. So a person thinks he's a bal seichel. I know everything. Doesn't make sense. It must be wrong. Or yesh mishiach shivatz mona. Someone thinks they're very handsome. They're very beautiful. That could lead to gaiva. Yesh mishiach shivatz nichpad. Someone thinks they're deserving of covet. The yesh shiachshiv atzmo gadol. Someone thinks they're great. Yesh shiachshiv atzmo chacham. Some think they're very wise. Klalo shal davar. Kol echam min adam atarim sheba olam. Im yachshav ha'adam sheyeshna bo. Harim sukim miyad lipo b'shachas zeh shal gaiba. Shabbos say the klal is, there are many wonderful things in the world. If a person thinks that he is in possession, absolute possession of any one of these things, that can lead a person to gaiva. Now, I will say, I want to be clear. Sometimes we think that, what's the opposite of gaiva? What's the opposite of gaiva? Anava. And sometimes we often have a skewed view of anava, that to be humble means to think I'm a nothing. I will say, to think you're a nothing means having low self-worth. That's unhealthy. It could be a sign of depression amongst a variety of different things. Right? So I will say, the opposite of gaiva is not thinking you're a nothing. The opposite of gaiva is thinking you're a something, but a healthy something. Healthy. So we'll talk about this. So the idea is, any one of these things, if I get too carried away with, I'm too smart, I'm very smart, I'm very good looking, I'm very this, I'm very that, anything you think you're very of could ultimately lead to gaiva. Ela tolados rabos umishunos tetzena. So say, here's the scary thing. The moment that a person falls into the clutches of gaiva, right? So now what happens? I think I'm very important. I think I'm very deserving. So we'll say, once a person becomes about gaiva, it's not just the pshat that I walk around with an inflated ego. I will say, but what happened? The averos that could stem from gaiva are so profound. Why? I will say, because let's play this out. If I think, right, if I'm about gaiva, and therefore I think I'm the smartest, the best looking, the most wonderful, what does that create? What does that create? A sense of entitlement. And the moment a person walks around life with a sense of entitlement, then what happens? Everything belongs to them. And the moment you think that everything belongs to you, that becomes a gateway for the commission of the worst kinds of averos. The worst averos are committed ultimately, again, through a sense of entitlement. And we'll say, by the way, you see this even societally unfolding over here. But again, we'll leave that on the side. So we'll say, again, as Ramchal often says, the power of negative traits is not just in the trait itself, but is ultimately, again, in what the trait engenders and the pathways, the multiple pathways that the negative trait paves. So we'll stop over here for today. Again, we'll continue Me'ez Hashem to go through Ramchal Me'ez Hashem tomorrow. What a way to start the week. Daf, blot of Gemara, little Ramchal, Shkoyach Hebra, Shkoyach. All right, have a great day, everyone. Have a great day. Good to see you.